Hello and welcome to this special edition of Nationwide. Tonight we find out how Amhrán na bhFiann became our national anthem, but only after a controversial beginning. We also look at how the tricolour emerged as our national flag, but wasn't fully embraced until 1916, some 70 years after it was first flown in Waterford. And we ask how the proclamation of 1916 has stood the test of time. Our national anthem, Amhrán na bhFiann, or the Soldier's Song, began as a marching song. It was written over 100 years ago to incite rebellion and the building of a new republic. Its melody and rousing chorus ensure a formal and passionate place for the anthem at public events. Memories of rebellion largely forgotten. Many people have only a hazy idea of the words and a limited understanding of them.
I would know them all.
No, I would know them.
I'd be mummed in a lot of it.
Yeah.
I'd know them in a crowd, but I wouldn't know them on my own.
And I can sing it, just a few words.
I can hum it at a match, which I would do in honour of 1916.
Can sing it along if somebody's singing it, but I actually don't know the words. I'm embarrassed to say.
I know who wrote it, Peadar Kearney, but I couldn't say that I could translate it.
In 1910, the original version of the Soldier's Song was written in English by Dubliner Peadar Kearney. Kearney was a passionate Republican devoted to Irish freedom. He was 32 when he joined the Rising, and he fought at Jacob's Biscuit Factory alongside Thomas MacDonagh. Kearney was Brendan Behan's uncle and the first of a Republican dynasty. Today, his grandson Conal Kearney is a guardian of his family's heritage at his home in Galway.
Peadar Kearney was a romantic, he was a passionate person, and he was so believed in the identity of us as an Irish nation. My grandfather wasn't just a poet, he was also a revolutionary and soldier. I just want to show you here a mobilisation order for Easter week 1916. And this is the mobilisation order that he was required to bring his rations, to meet at 12 noon, and to bring rations for only 12 hours. Now, you know, the Rising lasted a week. I don't know what did they expect a revolution to last 12 hours, but there you go.
Peadar Kearney was one of the many rebels who continued after the Rising in their struggle to achieve full independence.
This would be 1917, during the War of Independence. He's wearing the uniform of the Irish Republican Brotherhood. He was a member of the Supreme Council of the Irish Republican Brotherhood. And so you can imagine at this time, it was quite brave to actually do that photograph. 1917, just before the Black and Tan campaign, he would have been a wanted man.
When Kearney wrote the Soldier's Song, it was instantly popular.
Soldiers are we, whose lives are pledged to Ireland. Some have come from a land beyond the wave, sworn to be free. No more our ancient sireland shall shelter the despot or the slave. Tonight we man the Barnabuil in Erin's cause, come woe or weal. Mid cannons roar and rifles peal, we'll chant a soldier's song.
Peadar Kearney, in some senses, is the right man at the right time for writing an anthem that becomes the national anthem for Ireland at a later date. This is a time in Irish history, and the Irish Volunteers are a movement in Irish history in need of something like Amhrán na bhFiann. They're actively seeking anthems, marching songs, these kind of things that will build an esprit de corps around this pre-revolutionary movement. There's a huge public desire to populate this movement with its own form of lineage and legacy in song and in verse. And Amhrán na bhFiann, or the Soldier's Song as it's better known in that period, becomes probably the best known of these. So it is an integral part of the sounds of 1916.
It wasn't until after the Rising that the Soldier's Song was translated into Irish and Amhrán na bhFiann came into being. At the same time, God Save the King was still being used at many public events.
In some senses, it is by default that Our on the Bhíon becomes the national anthem. It's seen as the least worst option, and that's not to say that it's not a strong national anthem, and it does become a strong national anthem in subsequent years. But there is an optimistic search for something better in the mid-1920s, and nothing better is found.
Eventually, by 1926 or thereabouts, the Free State decided that they would adopt a soldier song as their anthem. Now, they didn't broadcast this, but they quietly sort of said, OK, we need an anthem. We're an independent state. We're not going to have God Save the King. That's not appropriate. So they decided that really they would adopt a soldier song. But they only adopted a part of it. It had about 3 or 4 verses. So they just adopted a part of it that became the national anthem. And then over the years, the Irish language version became the preeminent one, and known as Our on the Bhíon. And it became then the national anthem of the Irish Free State, and then again, of course, of Ireland of the Republic.
Having been adopted as the national anthem in 1926, the song was used by the fledgling Radio Éireann for its close down and at the end of performances in theatres and cinemas. Its acceptance as official anthem had begun.
I don't think I can think of a single example in world history where a national anthem is as reluctantly adopted by an independent state as is the Irish national anthem. It's something that the state is entirely uncomfortable with making official. And it's only from pressure from outside of the Dáil and from backbenchers that the state formulates an official policy on the national anthem. It's not until 1925 and 1926 that a real national debate around, do we have a national anthem? What is the national anthem? Is the soldier song the national anthem begins to emerge.
Conal Carney has come to Cathal Brugha Barracks in Dublin to view the original score of Our on the Bhíon with Mark Armstrong, director of the Defence Forces School of Music.
This was all handwritten, wasn't it?
It was completely handwritten. There were no photocopiers then. And
amazing.
If you wanted the band or the orchestra to play it, you had to write out their separate part for them. So here we go. Here's the conductor's part.
The official anthem now comprises of only the original chorus, and playing it is one of the routine duties for members of Defence Forces bands.
It depends on the conductor on the day, of course, but it's between 50 and 55 seconds, played at the correct tempo. There is a correct tempo set. But of course, the national anthem was longer at one point. It had verses as well as a chorus. But it became cumbersome to play that at the end of cinemas and theatres. So the government decided in the 30s that the chorus alone, Sinn Féin Fáil, was going to become the national anthem.
For military bands, the anthem requires the utmost formality. Natalia Astramovich is a member of an army band and also a soldier. Would she have divided loyalties between her new anthem and that of her native Poland?
It depends on the atmosphere and on the job, really, because when you play it in the middle of the pitch at Aviva Stadium, you really have tears in your eyes because it's just so amazing. And the other time when you play it in front of the GPO and the big state occasion, it's actually quite emotional for different reasons, and you just feel pride.
And in terms of your own loyalties as a Polish person, are you torn whenever you have to play the Polish anthem or the national anthem?
No, I think the only concern about being kind of Irish, because that's the way I feel, and being Polish, was the last football match when Poland played against Ireland, and then I'm definitely supporting Poland, but secretly kind of loving both.
Croke Park was thronged. Every possible vantage point was taken up early in the day.
Having been eventually and officially accepted as our national anthem, Our on the Bhíon increased in popularity.
And the first burst of Waterford enthusiasm soon followed.
But it was only when the GAA across the country embraced it as a truly national anthem that it became the established one.
the fact that the national anthem is only officially adopted by Cabinet and the State in 1926, and the actual form of it is only formalised by the Irish Army in 1929, it's really the early 1930s and the unlikely vehicle of the GAA that really spreads the message of the Irish national anthem and makes it a part of daily life in Ireland. At every parish level, at every county match, at every All-Ireland final, this is being played. So it's being played week in, week out. And I think in that particular way, the GAA has a special role in spreading the Irish national anthem.
However, the GAA's embrace could not ensure the anthem's acceptability across the island of Ireland. Áireann na Bhíodhán would, as the troubles in Northern Ireland raged, present problems.
I think many unionists would find the Irish anthem unappealing, but they would find it unappealing not necessarily because of what it says, but because of what it is, that it is the anthem of what is claimed to be an Irish republic.
At Athletic Park as Donal Lenihan leads Ireland onto the pitch.
This became most evident at the Rugby World Cup encounter between Wales and Ireland in New Zealand in 1987.
So we found ourselves in the first World Cup and everybody else had a song and we didn't. And so we're standing there in wet and windy Wellington about to take on Wales. And we'd listened to the very powerful Welsh anthem and we wondered what we were going to get.
So the crowd standing for the Irish team song, The Rose of Tralee.
Next thing, over the tannoy system came about the worst recording I've ever heard of The Rose of Tralee. And as I say, there's many songs you're going to lay your life down for, but The Rose of Tralee is certainly not one of them. Well, certainly I don't think Rose of Tralee was a great compromise, but I think what it started then was a journey to look at the issue and see if we could find a way that a compromise could be reached. And then with the leadership of the likes of Sid Miller and Tom Kieran and others, and building on the relationships that rugby had kept going on the island, they approached Phil Coulter and said, could you produce a song for us? And out of that came Ireland's Call.
Well, I think there was a need for inclusivity because when the Irish rugby team came from north and south of the border, and we played Áireann na Bhíodhán all the time, didn't include the players from north of the border. And I think, personally, I think it's a great anthem, substitute anthem, as it were. The words are good, the melody is extremely good. The only thing I think is a shame when the Ireland team plays away, we never hear Áireann na Bhíodhán, we just hear Ireland's Call.
The national anthem resonates at different levels on different occasions, sporting, cultural and ceremonial. But perhaps its greatest power is to stir the emotions.
One standout moment would be the visit of Queen Elizabeth of England. Both the Irish anthem and God Save the Queen would have been played. And this was the first time that those two anthems would have been played together in the presence of the British head of state.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm reminded of the famous rugby match in Croke Park, I think, yes, 2007, England and Ireland. And it was a high voltage moment because this in the place, Croke Park, where the horrors of Bloody Sunday occurred. So the British anthem was to be played, followed by the Irish Áireann na Bhíodhán anthem. The 82,000 fans there listened with respect to the British anthem. And then Áireann na Bhíodhán was played. And 82,000 people proudly, volume went up. And it was then an electric moment. and the camera panning the rugby team.
I still am enormously moved every time I sing it. And I can quite understand that rugby player, Hayes, who used to sob his way all through the national anthem. It can bring a tear to my eye. I think, in a way, a national anthem is saying that this is who I am and this is where I belong.
So, does an anthem called the Soldier's Song, with words about the roar of cannon and peal of rifles, have a place in 21st century Ireland?
Inevitably, in a country with as divisive a history as ours is, the anthem is going to create some difficulties. And that's one of the reasons that I think we should certainly rewrite the words.
I don't understand why we're all so consumed with guilt about these lyrics, when the English don't seem to have any problem with their anthem being brutal about the Scots. And also the French, the Marseillaise, is a fairly bloody affair. So I think ours is quite mild in comparison to those two anthems. So I don't see a reason for change.
But I would be in favour of an additional song being produced that maybe was reflective of Northern Ireland, and that everybody then could buy into, because we agreed that it is a place that we all share and we have to live here, and we can either do that in the way we've done in the past, or we can do it in a way that actually builds relationships and in which we all do well.
The national anthem is part of our history. That can never be taken away. If we were to change the Irish national anthem, Royal Naveen, I think we might as well change the name of Croke Park to something else. Or we might turn the GPO into a fast food outlet. It cannot be changed.
Yes, its language is not terribly contemporary, but it's the anthem, and an anthem, I suppose, has a status, it has a resonance beyond what it actually says.
You know that great old Irish saying, have yous no homes to go to? In a way, this is saying, I have a home to go to.
Coming up in part 2, Olympian Ronnie Delaney on why the tricolour is more important to him than ever, and the success of the Flags to Schools programme.
When it's flown properly and officially representing my country, I feel a great sense of pride.
The inclusiveness of that flag has finally come to a certain amount of fruition.
Flags are very, very powerful symbols. They react deeply upon people.
The Irish tricolour consists of 3 colours, green, white and orange, symbolising the unity of the 2 main traditions on the island brought together by peace. Its origins can be traced back to the 19th century in Waterford and Thomas Francis Marr. A son of the Catholic merchant class, he was attracted to and inspired by events that were unfolding across revolutionary Europe, where tricolours in various formats were being adopted. In Paris, he became convinced that the idea behind the French tricolour could be applied to Ireland.
The idea of a tricolour flag, a revolutionary symbol, always very, very important. In fact, he flew that tricolour of green, white and orange here in Waterford in March 1848, early March. First time it was flown here in the country. On his return from France, from Paris, he wrote in the Nation newspaper of his ideal, his dream of a new Ireland, where Catholic and Protestant could unite together under this new flag, symbolised by the green, the orange and the white standing for peace between the 2 communities.
At first a supporter of Daniel O'Connell, Marr quickly became disillusioned with constitutional politics. In 1848, he took part in the failed rebellion of the Young Irelanders and was subsequently deported to Van Diemen's Land. In an extraordinarily eventful life, Marr escaped to the United States, where he forged a new military career on the Union side in the American Civil War. But the tricolour that Marr as a young man had so passionately espoused as a symbol of unity fell into disuse after he left Ireland. In Waterford, however, it was always remembered as Marr's flag. Over half a century later, and before the Rising of 1916, the tricolour re-emerged as one of the flags that Pádraic Pearse and the Irish Volunteers pledged loyalty to. It flew on the GPO and other garrisons during the events of Easter week.
Rebellions are chaotic affairs, so there's a big debate afterwards of what was the official flag. We know in 1915, Pádraic Pearse declares that the green flag with a yellow harp, made of Erin harp, is the official flag of the Irish Volunteers. He issues an order that all battalions of the Irish Volunteers should go and create such a flag. However, then the tricolour appears during the Rising, so we're not sure which is the official flag. Both flags or types of flags do appear in a lot of the garrisons around Dublin.
Yet another flag of the Rising was the emblematic Irish Republic flag. It survived the fighting intact and is in the National Museum in Collins Barracks in Dublin, where it's been undergoing a forensic conservation process.
Well, this flag has a very clear provenance. It was taken down by British soldiers, and they are clearly seen parading around with it and photographed with it, generally upside down and back to front, which is deliberate dis because they won.
It looks a little bit rough and ready. What's your assessment?
That's exactly the case. We're having a revolution in the morning flag. It is not a professionally made flag, either embroidered or printed up correctly, as some of the other flags in 1916 are. So samples of this paint have been sent to the state labs, and they have come back that it is full of lead. It is basically 100 years old house paint. We have taken photomicrographs, which is with this machine, of all the holes that they think are interesting. Some of the bigger holes that have deliberate scorch marks around the edges of them, they actually think they probably are cinders or things flying. Anything that is seen to be a bullet hole or even evidence of battle from scorch damage will be left clearly visible as a hole because they're part of what's happened to the piece.
At the time of the Rising, the Irish Republic flag was the most iconic, but it was the tricolour which grew in popularity, coinciding with the growing sentiment of support for the rebels.
By Christmas 1916, going to 1917, it's starting to appear in public events. And it's really by the public taking ownership of the flag that it becomes our national flag. So it doesn't happen in 1916 during the Rising. It kind of develops over maybe a year and a half. And after the executions, you're starting to see greater sympathy with the rebels, and in particular with the leaders. And in late 1916, as they go into 17, large numbers of prisoners, now these are the people who have been sent to Wales and other prisons around England, are starting to come back. And that's where in particular you start to see the tricolour flag turning up.
The tricolour was formally adopted as the national flag in 1922 as the banner of the new republic. And in 1937 it was given constitutional status. But the flag that was intended to inspire unity and respect became a prominent feature of the Northern Troubles.
It's a proclamation of territorial ownership. It's waving a flag in the face of the other. It's wrapping the flag around you, whether it be green, white and orange or the Union Jack. Flags are dishonoured in Northern Ireland all the time because they are used as tattered emblems to mark territory. And they're shown very little respect, I think, in that context.
I'm very conscious that it has been abused and devalued for years by being used in Northern Ireland as a sectarian symbol. And I remember going around areas of Belfast where, you know, the flag was flying from every corner, and it wasn't so much saying this is Ireland, it was more saying this is Catholic. And that I didn't like. I didn't like it being wrapped around the coffins of IRA bombers or gunmen. I feel it has been devalued. I would like to think that perhaps in time it might lose that aspect.
Now, almost 20 years after the Good Friday Agreement, there's some evidence of change and greater tolerance.
As a young boy, I seen the tricolour not as a sign of another nation, another country. I seen the tricolour as a sign of the IRA and the support for the IRA in Belfast. And as a young boy, it wouldn't have been the first tricolour that I went and took down as a kid. You know, I see a completely different view of the flag now, to be honest with you, you know.
But it was a visceral or emotional response, something that was hostile to you.
Yes, because at the time, you know, the Republican movement was fighting for a united Ireland, and in the course of that united Ireland, that flag was the flag of that they were espousing to want to have allegiance to, and as far as we were concerned, that's the flag that they were trying to enforce the Protestant community to actually accept to live under.
We do see less tricolours, especially on the Falls Road today, than we may have in the past. And I guess it shows a move towards a future where we don't need to mark the lampposts. You know, the people are in the area are well aware that, you know, this is Ireland and we live in Ireland. And I guess it's very much about showing our national flag the respect it deserves. And in this instance, the men, the volunteers, etc., who died for the cause, to be able to fly that flag, it's flown with that level of respect.
One person for whom the flag evokes powerful feelings is Olympian Ronnie Delaney. He's returning to the Curragh camp where he was a cadet 61 years ago.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
Today, Ronnie's being received by this year's crop of cadets and to view a precious artefact from his sporting life.
How does it arise, Ronnie, that the same flag that flew in Melbourne in 1956 ends up here in the Cadets' Mess in the Curragh?
Obviously, the flag sits so well here. I had to find a home for it. I mean, I can't have the Olympic flag in a drawer in my home, so fortuitously, my affection for the Army, my respect for the Army, my respect for what they were trying to do with me, the sort of discipline they were instilling in me, I thought it would be most appropriate to present the flag to the Irish Cadet School. In an Olympic context, it's even more important to me now because of all the tawdry stuff that's going on about the sport, not so much the Olympics, but the awful stories that are emanating from sport. I don't think it's ever been more important that the symbols of the great sport, the flag being raised when you win gold, the anthem of the winner being played, that's the sort of evocative things that are still inspiring in terms of the time that it is in Irish history. Extraordinary relevance in terms of the unity of our country, the looking forward of our country, the hopes of us all. Our flag is fundamental to that. It's as honoured today as it has ever been.
And we are now looking at history in the making. Sonia O'Sullivan is on her way to becoming the first Irish woman athlete to strike gold at the European Championships.
And as she struck gold, Sonia O'Sullivan's father, John, was standing by with a tricolour.
Sonia O'Sullivan from Cove comes home triumphant.
This was the first time that we were going to have an Irish woman winning a major medal. We wanted to show that she was from Ireland. People probably didn't know her as an Irish person because she had been in America, done her scholarship in America, and she was new on the international scene, so it was great that we were going to make sure that if she did win, that she was going to show the Irish colour.
What a performance by Sonia O'Sullivan.
A year later in Gothenburg, however, Sonia's glorious win was marred somewhat by a misunderstanding over the flag.
They offered her a flag. She said no. She said, you know, I'm tired. I want to try and get one with a pole on it. And she moved on down along to the back straight then. And this other person then gave her a flag which had a big pole on it. And much to her dismay, she realised this thing is bloody heavier than one without a pole, so she threw that back at them again. People then came to the conclusion that she had rejected the Irish flag, which wasn't the situation. It's a great joy. It makes you feel very proud to be Irish when you see the flag going up the pole and the national anthem being played.
On big sporting occasions, the flag is a powerful badge of identity. Fans and stars alike have embraced the green, white and orange, from the glory years of Jack's army to the present day. The flag's principal role in Ireland, however, is formal and ceremonial. On occasions such as the funeral of a Garda killed on duty, the flag is flown at half-mast and the coffin is draped in the national colours.
Respect is
certainly very important for us. It's actually one of our core values. That's enshrined, for example, in how we salute and how we treat each other on a daily basis in our professional context. But also the flag, obviously, is the pinnacle of respect for us. So when we perform state ceremonial, we are acting, if you like, on behalf of the citizens of Ireland, and we are according respect to that symbol of our nationality, of our identity. From a military point of view as well as a state point of view, there are strict protocols governing the raising and lowering of the national flag. In the barracks here, we will raise the flag at 0800 hours in the morning, and the time that we lower the flag changes depending on light. We will always lower the flag before last light, because for us it's disrespectful to leave the flag flying after the hours of darkness. So it's a very, very important part of our daily routine. It quietly happens in military installations all around the country, but it's something we've been doing every single day without fail since the barracks would have been taken over, for example, back in 1922 after independence.
Equally for the Defence Forces, the flag has a central role in the performance of commemorative duties. Aran Islander Caoimhán Seoige lost his life in 1981 while on peacekeeping duties in Lebanon. Today, several Army colleagues are visiting Innisir to present his old school with a commemorative booklet on Private Seoige. In addition, they're visiting each of the island schools to talk about 1916 and how it's being commemorated in this centenary year.
Mar éireannaí go 9 muid gur bratach náisiúnta tá gceist agus gúil muidir cumar ó céad bliain 1960. Roimh seo nárad nó aran nárad 1960, ní os na gasú céirde céird faoi tábhaí 1960. Ach tá 1960 inis beo ina naigne agus beidh go brach agus tá sé fíor-fíorthach go meachsaigh na gasú leoga sin.
Sean Brath agus an túraí.
That has been a fantastic initiative, really and truly. Government decided as part of the 2016 centenary programme that every school in the country should get a national flag. In the case of the primary schools, both special schools, Gael Scoilina, schools on the islands, private primary schools, all of those schools were visited by a member of Oldie Nahairn in uniform and presented with the national flag as well as a copy of the 1916 proclamation and a copy of Éire an na Bhíon. And we would hope that schools will keep that flag in safekeeping and raise it on special occasions. It's about getting our children, who are the next generation and who will represent the next 100 years, to understand the significance of this symbol of our nation, to engage with it, and essentially to be activators within the community for the national flag and to know what it's about. And I think we successfully achieved that in the Flags for Schools programme.
Join us in part 3 when we see how the proclamation was printed in extraordinary circumstances in 1916 and what it represents 100 years on. What kind of modern Ireland would emerge from the 1916 Rising was envisaged in the proclamation. It was a document that was informed not just by idealism, but by a truly progressive and liberal philosophy for its time.
Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom.
When Pádraig Pearse left the GPO to read the 1916 proclamation, he was declaring the creation of an Irish state, but there were few there to listen to him. The document, written by Pearse and other leaders, was inspired by revolutions throughout Europe, the American Declaration of Independence, Robert Emmet and others.
The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation and all of its parts, cherishing all the children of the nation equally.
Well, the main themes are, this is going to be a genuine republic. We're breaking not just with England, we're breaking with the concept of monarchy and the concept of privilege that goes with that. So it is a republic which will try to offer something bordering on equal opportunity to all our citizens and a society. It's a societal as well as simply a political revolutionary document. That's often overlooked because obviously things didn't turn out societally all that greatly in Ireland subsequently. But it is a quite revolutionary document in social and in cultural as well as political terms.
It is a fascinating document. It's a very progressive document. You know, most of us know at least that it starts Irish men and Irish women. This was written in 1916 when no country in Europe gave the vote to women. So in its very opening statement, it proclaims the equality of men and women.
It's a deeply idealistic document, and they were a very idealistic generation, idealistic and radical, because one of the things that strikes you reading the document as a woman living today is the extent to which it tries to deliver gender equality. And that phrase about the election of a national government by the suffrage of Irish men and Irish women. At the time, that was massive. I mean, the US didn't have women's suffrage, the UK didn't have it, France, Italy, Spain, nowhere. So this was a very forward-looking document in that way.
At Dublin City Library on Pearse Street, one of the few surviving copies of the proclamation forms the centrepiece of a new exhibition. Many people have come to the library to take a look at a document that has shaped our history.
Well, the first thing the proclamation does is proclaim the Irish Republic. And for this, they have invented a new word in Irish called Poblacht. You can see it there at the very top, Poblacht na hÉireann. And that is combining the word pobl, or people, with locht, action. And it's actually maintaining that everyone on the island is now a citizen rather than a subject as they are of the British. And the first thing is that it's entirely inclusive. Civil and religious liberty is guaranteed. That's really important. It brings in those who are not of the Catholic faith, those who are a minority, such as the Unionists, they're guaranteed their civil rights. And there's even a remark in the proclamation that the difficulties between the majority and the minority are caused by the action of the British. They're not real problems at all. So that might be perhaps a little bit naive, but nevertheless it's sincerely held. When they came together to write the proclamation, we believe that it was written out by hand. Now, this copy of the proclamation has not survived, but it must have been written out by hand for the printers to work from. But what we also know is that the signatures were on a separate piece of paper. And Christopher Brady, who was one of the printers, actually kept this piece of paper, and when he was arrested himself after the 1916 Rising, he actually swallowed it. He ate it as a means, perhaps vain means, indeed vain means, of protecting the 7 signatories from execution.
Today, the proclamation is still being printed at the National Print Museum.
Anne, pleased to meet you again.
Hello, Alf. Hello. Hi, Billy. So this machine here, the Wharfedale, is similar to the machine that actually printed the proclamation of 1916.
Twice the size. It would be the daddy of the one that was used in 1916.
Any chance you might show me how it works?
So exactly how it works. No problem whatsoever.
Okay, great. Come down here, have a look. What's happening here, Alf?
Willie is putting ink on the slab so that we can transfer onto the rollers to start printing. I'll have to put the table down. Okay.
Oh my goodness, right. Okay. So this is a replica of what was made by the Wharfdale in 1916, and what a racket it makes.
Yeah, it's a little bit noisy.
What were the problems associated with printing this on an old Wharfdale, which is fairly old and dilapidated?
It is indeed. The main problem was the restriction of the amount of type that they had. They got 2 cases of type from a English printer up in the Parnell Street area who donated it to them, brought down on a handcart. But when they started to set the job, E is the most common used letter in the English language, and the E's ran out. So if you look at this line here, you'll find that all of the E's are the wrong size.
We arrived in Liberty Hall, I and my 2 colleagues, at between 10 and 11 o'clock on Easter Sunday morning. We weren't finished until between 12 and 1 Easter Monday morning. We had to print the proclamation in two pieces because we hadn't enough of type to print the whole issue, and we had to reset it again.
Had you enough letters?
Well, we had, but we were stuck for the letter F for E, and we all had a brainwave, and I got a penknife and I bored a hole in the letter F, the bottom of it, you know. And I got a tube I went out to Eden Keane, I got a tube of sealing wax, and I got a penny candle, and I lit the candle and I smeared over it, which held out for the whole issue.
What actually happened when you got the text?
Commandant Thomas MacDonagh read it to us first, and then after that he asked us for a decision. And I said, as the son of a Dublin printer, I consider it a great honour to do that work.
The other thing that was wrong with it, they didn't have enough of the bigger type. And that C is in fact an O. And that R over there, the leg is not the same as this one. You see that it's straight, as again, this one's curved. That was done with sealing wax.
So what was that R originally?
A P.
Okay. There are dangerous times when they were printing this, and the compositors had to work with protection from the Irish Citizen Army.
They were under arrest. James Connolly had them put under arrest as soon as they arrived at Liberty Hall, so that if the British Army came down, they could say they were printing it under duress.
Nonetheless, would it be fair to say that they would have been sympathetic to the cause?
I would think so. I would think so. Other than that, I couldn't see somebody staying there all night to set something that he wasn't in agreement with.
Aren't you lucky to have in the Irish Print Museum the exact plate which reproduces the imperfections that were contained in the original 1916 proclamation?
We are, and we're very, very lucky, and we are going to print from that plate on the date, exact date of the 100th anniversary of 1916. Willie, myself and our associate Freddie Snow are going to come in at what we think will be the same time, and we're going to print the proclamation again.
How many copies are you planning to print?
We print no less than 100 for that particular print.
And will you do it through the night?
We will indeed do the night exactly as it was done in the 1916.
That's a really nice testament to the men of 1916 and the compositors who perhaps are forgotten in all of this.
Yep. The proclamation is remembered, but the people who did it, nobody knows or worries about who they were. So it will be hopefully a testament to them.
And what of the legacy and relevance of the proclamation in modern and inclusive Ireland?
What principles will the next generation consider important to their lives? At the multicultural St. Senan's Primary School in Enniscorthy, work on producing a new proclamation for the school in 2016 revealed a surprising level of awareness of history and issues facing society.
This is the original proclamation.
Teacher Adeline Fox coordinated the proclamation project.
Okay guys, so we're putting the finishing touches to our proclamation project now. So we want to make sure we have all the main points in it that we want to put in it.
In Dublin especially, there's just homeless people everywhere, and everyone has the right to have a place they can call home.
There's not enough beds for people who are sick, and you might be waiting up to like months for an appointment with a doctor, even if you're like feeling really sick.
I feel education should be added because it's a big matter, like throughout, especially when like you're a child and then like you're growing up, so you want to have a good education to live from. And I think especially third level education is not many people get the chance.
Absolutely. I was very pleasantly surprised, now I really was. For children of their age, they have really good understanding. They've come in and tell me what they'd heard on the news, and what they've seen themselves even, and they were able to draw conclusions from what they hear on the news and make their own judgments, which was really good. And we had some excellent debate, and it's very encouraging that the youth of today is so engaged in society. It really is. We have a vision of children stuck in their iPads, but it's absolutely not the case. As I learned from working with this group, they're very much in tune with Irish society, and they want to improve it any way they can.
We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies to be sovereign and indefeasible. In every generation, the Irish people have asserted their right to national freedom and sovereignty.
100 years on, I think it's perfectly correct for us to ask ourselves, where stands the Republic today? And I think when you look around at the levels of homelessness, at the fact that so many children are living in poverty, the fact that the best and brightest of our young people have been forced through economic circumstances to flee the country, I think you have to say that this state has failed the aspirations contained in that wonderful document.
In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny to which it is called.
The document actually stands, I think, even in modern day, as something which tries at least to remember that there were women around the place, there were poor people around the place, there were all sorts of people around the place, that in fact you had to include everybody.
As a foundation document, as an aspirational document, it holds our challenges to us today, actually, to say, well, this republic that was proclaimed, is this what we live in? How can we go about making sure that the words of the proclamation become a reality today?
I would say if one is of similar disposition and similar ideological impulse, that the document is still very valid and still pertains very much to... A lot of what's in that document has not been achieved. If one wants to achieve it, it still remains a document on which one can base one's ideals.
Join us again on Friday when Mary Kennedy looks at how 1916 was commemorated in 1966.
And that hour-long nationwide special is at 6:30 on Friday. One next this evening. Dan is interested in working 9 to 5 just to make a living in Fair City after tonight's Lotto next.